A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to write an endorsement for an incredible book on creativity called The Saints and the Poets by Shun Lee Fong. It's a terrific exploration of what creativity can do in your life and how important it is and how to navigate that world. And so I decided to have Shun Lee on the show today. We're going to talk today about creativity, about connecting in Hollywood, surviving, navigating your career as a creative person, a filmmaker, a producer. We're going to be talking all about that stuff. So if you're creative and if you're considering a career in the entertainment or media industry, you need to stay tuned today. All right, welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
I'm incredibly grateful that you're on. You know, we've known each other for probably 20 years, maybe. I don't know, it's been a long time.
It's been a long time, yeah.
And it's interesting to me, the thing I like about you is you're involved in so many things. Forget this focus business. You're a Renaissance man.
Yeah, the difference between being a generalist and being somebody who specializes.
But you know what? In this age where college professors are focusing so much, they know more and more about less and less till they know everything there is to know about nothing. I'm a real believer in the Renaissance thing. I've read a couple of interesting books on creativity and genius just lately. And in every case, the research shows people who are geniuses are not the smartest people or the most focused people. They're interested in a lot of things. So that's why I like you. I like hanging out with you.
Good. The genius part? Or
No, not the genius part.
Okay, all right.
But here's the thing. You were trained as a lawyer.
That's right.
You went to college to be an attorney.
Yep.
And how did you end up in Hollywood?
Well, I actually practiced law out in the Midwest, a couple states, still licensed there in Nebraska and Iowa.
What kind of law did you practice?
I did a lot of different types because when you're in the Midwest, you kind of, again, you're not specializing as much. But I did a lot in terms of media law. I did a lot in entertainment, music. I was doing a lot with intellectual property, so copyrights, trademarks, that sort of thing.
And what finally was the tipping point that you needed to come to Hollywood?
Well, I was sneaking out of my firm to go do auditions.
Really?
I had an agent there in the Midwest, and she was setting up these auditions, and I was just praying that none of the partners in my firm would see anything that I was in. And
those hot tub commercials don't go well.
We have a certain brand that we're trying to keep up.
Yeah, interesting. So you finally realized the momentum was too great, it was time to move?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it. I think I've always been in a creative family. There's 8 kids in my family, including me. We're all in the arts in some fashion, including my parents. And so I was missing that creative side. Lawyers don't get to be creative that often. When they start getting creative, then they start looking at disbarring and that sort of thing. So, so for me, I was like, boy, I really miss that side of who I am. I was a worship leader at my church, so I was getting to do a bit, but the more I was sneaking out of my firm, the more I was realizing that, boy, there's something here that's part of my DNA that I need to address.
Well, after you've started a professional career somewhere else, it's quite a risk to step out and come to Hollywood.
It can be terrifying. I mean, there are people who maybe their parents said, hey, you need to go study or you need to follow this particular career path. And then at some point they're like, this just isn't me. And so you've gotten used to having that nice paycheck every other week. And you get used to, that sense of people kind of looking up to you because of a particular career.
I've heard that the 2 most addictive substances in the world are heroin and a regular paycheck. And people do get, I got fired at 36. I've talked about that on other episodes. I got fired at 36, but at least I was in the industry. I was in the Midwest producing and directing. And so when I came out, it was still a huge leap because moving your whole family. I had 2 little kids, and that's a big step, but you're changing careers 100%.
Yeah, and it wasn't something I did lightly, and I don't recommend anybody do it lightly. I spent a lot of time praying about it, seeking out mentors who had known me. I had one of the partners in my firm actually was the head of the board of elders at my church, so I was going to him regularly and saying, I think I'm being called to something here. And so this idea of calling is something that I had to really examine, and I think we don't do a really good job of exploring that in today's culture.
You're exactly right. So you came to here and you started as an actor. I mean, you continued doing legal stuff, right? I mean, were you still?
I was still licensed, still am, and I would do little bits and pieces here and there. But I remember I kind of had it in my hip pocket, like, well, I can always go back and be a lawyer. And at one point, I just felt like God was saying to me, "Hey, look, if I call you to something, you don't get to keep that as your
Fallback.
as your fallback. That's right. You have to let
Yeah.
go. You can't have a foot in both worlds.
The old story about Cortez burning the ship, so there was
Yeah.
no way they could go back to
Exactly.
Spain.
I didn't want that
It's
to
good.
be my Egypt, where I was
Yeah.
always looking back and wondering if I should have that regular paycheck
Boy,
again.
that's really good. That's
Yeah.
actually very insightful. But along the line, as you're doing auditions and performing in places, you start thinking about producing. You start thinking about creating a community of like-minded people in Hollywood. How did
Yeah.
Hollywood Connect, the Greenhouse? How did all these things evolve?
Well, when I got here, I knew very few people. I knew a couple
Okay.
people here and there. And I just remember thinking how difficult it was just to get some traction, just to
makes
have
sense.
relationship
Yeah.
with people in this town or in the
true.
entertainment world, especially if you're coming from law
Yeah.
or something else. And just realizing there was a real need for a conversation with people of faith, also with people
Yeah.
who may not have that faith,
Right.
just to be able to sit down and talk. What does it mean to be an effective creative artist? What does that
Yeah.
look like from a holistic point of view? And so that's really what kind of pushed me in that direction. I just got
Interesting.
a few people together, and we got together in a church basement and said, hey, let's have this conversation. And if anybody else wants to join us, feel free to invite
And
them.
is that how Greenhouse Arts and Media got rolling?
Yep, that's how the Greenhouse got started. We started that in June of 2007.
Okay.
So we're just over 12 years old
Wow,
right now.
been a
And
long time.
In that time, we've had about 8,500 people come through there, our various programs.
Tell me how it works.
Yeah. So we really want to identify where people are. It's one
Okay.
thing to say, hey, we've got all these programs, just come be a part of these programs. It's another thing to form relationship with people and say, hey, you really need this right now, and be able to provide
Okay.
those resources to them. Some people come here and they need to find a good church.
Okay.
We want to provide that for them. Some people come here, they need more training. So we have a series of workshops called the Spotlight Workshops.
Which are great workshops, by the way.
And you've taught
Terrific,
there,
yeah.
actually, yeah. And
Great
so that's what
workshops.
makes them great, actually.
Of course.
Yeah.
But you bring in major league people from the industry. I'm shocked
Yeah.
at sometime when I get the mailings, I'm shocked at the studio heads, the major producers, editors, casting
Yeah.
directors, all kind of
Yeah.
people that come in to teach. It's amazing.
Well, it's sad, but there are a lot of scams in this industry.
boy, that's for
There
sure.
are a lot of people out
Particularly
there,
for
just especially for actors, just trying to make a buck off
Yeah.
of all these people who are coming to pursue their dreams. We decided that for our workshops, we were only going to use working professionals who had achieved some
good.
success in their various areas.
Which is shocking that you asked me to come and speak, because I don't know what that's about.
No, you're
But-
successful.
But now a part of Greenhouse too is, at least early on, you were producing stuff. You were
Yeah.
the team was producing stuff.
We still are, actually.
Okay.
Initially, we started a group. We just called it the production program.
Yeah.
And everybody could pitch in $100 a quarter, and we'd make films together. We quickly found out that too many people had $100 to spend, and we had too many people waiting in line to make these
Okay.
films. So we had to kind of re-examine our approach to that. And so we now have a program called the Creative Lab,
Okay.
in which we go out and we audition actors. We take writing samples from writers. We take the top 12 actors. So there's a fight to get into it.
Yeah, which is
And-
great.
And then we take the top 6 writers and we pair them up into groups. And over the course of a month, they're getting mentored, they're getting coaching, they're working on short films
really
together,
interesting.
and we shoot 6 short films at the end of each month.
So you walk away at the end with a series of short films you worked on.
Yeah, that's right. And everybody gets IMDb credit. Everybody's getting demo reel footage. People have used that footage to go out and get representation from agents and
And where
managers.
can we find out about that? Where we go online and see that?
Yeah, greenhouseproductions.com. Everything's there, all our different programs.
Greenhouseproductions.com. Check it out, particularly if you're new to Hollywood or you're thinking about coming to Hollywood. It's a great source of information, and particularly the Spotlight workshops are. I got to say, they're just
Yeah,
really
thank you.
terrific. And
Thank you.
and you're doing them. He's done them at CBS. He's done them at Netflix. At various places around the city, but they're legit places with legit teachers,
Yeah.
and it's really great information, and it's remarkably cheap.
We try to keep it as low as possible.
Yeah,
we
I
know
love that.
Some of the people, whether
Yeah.
they're new in town or they've been in this business for 30 years, there's a lot of starving artists out there. So we're not out there to make them starve even more.
Now, tell Hollywood Connect is kind of a spin-off or relationship to that. Tell me about
Yeah,
Hollywood Connect.
actually was a ministry that was here in town when I got here, and I was one
Okay.
of their guinea pigs at that point. At a certain point, they changed their leadership, and they asked the Greenhouse if we would take on that particular ministry. So it's
Okay.
come underneath the Greenhouse. It is geared towards people who are either thinking about moving to LA to be in the entertainment industry, or maybe they're in their first year or two.
Okay.
Because there's a certain set of questions that people like that
Yeah.
need to have answered and may not be quite as applicable to people who have been in the business for 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So we really want to get those people together and make sure they have all the resources they need through our website, HollywoodConnect.com.
And these are practical things, how to find a headshot photographer or acting classes, stuff like that?
Stuff like that, how to find your first day job, how to find a place to live in town, all the places you should avoid, acting classes you should avoid, that sort of thing.
That's even more. That's
yeah.
got to be pretty thick. And that's HollywoodConnect.com, right?
That's right. And you can also find it through greenhouseproductions.com.
Okay, definitely check it out, because if you have questions about Hollywood, it's a great resource. And you know, the big thing for me, and by the way, in the middle of all that, how did the book come out? I talked about that in the teaser.
Yeah.
Saints and the Poets. This is a great book on creativity. How did this happen?
Yeah, this was something that over the years of being here, I was sending a lot of prayer letters home to people back in my church, or I was just journaling and trying to discover what it means to be a creative professional myself.
Yeah.
And I began to take these and say, you know what, I think this is for more than just me. I think we need to have, I think these are things that other people can tap into. And so I broke them into 52 different episodes or chapters.
Okay, yeah.
And so it's kind of a devotional. You can take one at a time throughout the year, or you can do them all at once.
And you have a companion journal that goes with it.
The companion journal has a bunch of creative tasks that you can do, exercises that you can engage in, just to kind of shake you up a little bit and find different ways to be creative.
Get your hands on it. It's great. And trust me, because creative people sometimes struggle alone. I'm not, I love working with teams, but I'm not a big fan of creative teams. You have to have creative teams, but there are moments when you really do important work where you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah, and especially certain types. I mean, if you're an editor or you're a screenwriter, you're spending a lot of time by yourself.
Yeah.
And to have things like this or other people who are just, kind of propelling you along, making sure you don't get stuck in a rut.
It makes a huge difference. So you've spent all these years working with literally thousands of people coming to the industry, navigating the industry. Give me some tips. What have you learned? I mean, a lot of people watching this are filmmakers. They wonder, my first question would be, do I need to live in Hollywood to be in the industry?
Not anymore. I mean, there are certain aspects of the industry that is much better to live here in LA because, like, if you're a producer, it's a little better to be here. You don't have
decisions are made here.
The decisions are made here. But now with it's a global industry, and so much is happening in Atlanta and in Canada and so many other places.
Yeah.
You can get plugged in from where you are. Eventually, I think you need to have ties here in LA.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you have to start here.
Yeah. And there are people that just aren't made for living in LA. Forget the industry for a minute.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a friend who his wife just hated living here.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to become a screenwriter, and she said, okay, we'll move out for 2 years. You have 2 years to make it. And of course, he didn't make it in 2 years because it's a little longer process.
Yeah.
And they went back to the Midwest, and he was really discouraged. But the lesson there is two things. One, I think you need to be comfortable and enjoy living in a big city, for one thing. But number two, you and your spouse have to be on the same page.
Absolutely.
Totally on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, have you found situations where people, just because they're going in different directions, or one likes LA, one hates it, it just doesn't work?
And there has to be a commitment to one another. I'm not married, so I don't have to do that. I just need to make sure my dog is happy. But he'll be happy when I tell him to be happy. But for married couples and even those having families, you have to really take that into account, because it can be really stressful. Especially if one person is in the industry and the other person is not.
Yeah.
They're almost two different worlds, and you need to make sure you stay
it's a pretty
really
intense
connected.
industry.
Very intense. The stress levels are incredibly high.
Yeah.
Incredibly high.
So what are the biggest mistakes you see people making who come to LA?
Oh, there's a lot.
Are there too many to talk about on a podcast?
That's like, we'll have
one
to come back
episode.
and do it again.
Yeah.
There's so many. One of them is not having a sense of structure. Coming from a lawyer's perspective, my day was planned out for me. I knew what I was going to do every day. I needed to be in my chair at a certain time, and then I left at a certain time, okay? And everything was planned out for me. When you come here, and especially in certain fields like acting and screenwriting, you have to create your own structure. If you're not doing that, if you're not able to create your own structure and keep yourself motivated, there's nobody else there to do it for you.
True.
So learning how to have that kind of work ethic, learning how to make sure you're getting up every day, and doing that every day is important.
When I first came out here, I was 36 years. Well, when I came out here for good, I was 36. Yeah. And I realized I've got to have a separate space to work. I've got to have I can't just lay in bed all day and on my computer. I have to get up and actually do the work. And you're exactly right. I'd have times I'd go to the post office, times I'd go visit this or go make these calls or whatever. And because you're not being, that structure doesn't happen from the outside like in most offices. You've got to make it happen. Yeah. And if you don't, you're not going to be good working at home.
That's exactly right. And you have to know who you are as a creative person. Some people are amazingly creative late at night. That is not me. I think you're one of those kind of people. You like to create.
No, I'm an early morning person.
You're an early morning, so you're more like
wife,
me.
Kathleen is late night. I'm early morning. I'm from 6 a.m. to noon. I'm awesome.
That's where I'm too.
Yeah. I'm worthless.
Yeah.
But that's when I'm do my writing. It's where I'm focused most of my creative time.
And you have to know that about yourself.
True.
And so many people don't know that about themselves. Where they're most creative. What are the things that make them resonate as a creative person, and then holding that really tight, making sure that nobody can step into that and separate you from that creative time, those inspirations that you need, that sort of thing.
So when you came out, were you was your pathway in going to auditions? Were you being an assistant somewhere? Were you helping other people? What was the pathway for you?
Yeah, I wore a lot of different hats, which I still continue to do. For some people, it's just about finding that day job and just hunkering down and getting out there and doing as many auditions as their job will allow them to do. For me, because I was able to come out here with a little bit of savings, I was able to come out here. My agent,
which is a good idea,
is a great idea. My agent was able to set me up with an agent here in town, so that was something I had within the first week, and that doesn't happen very often for actors. So I kind of hit the ground running when it came to the acting side of things. I was able to join the union within about 6 months. That doesn't happen very often. But, some of the other things I did, I worked for Mel Gibson's Icon production company with The Passion of the Christ, so I was there for that.
Okay.
And, I would take these jobs where it would just keep inserting me into the process. And it might be for 2 weeks, it might be for a month, and then you're back out again and you have to fight your way back in again. So,
it's interesting what you said about getting on so fast, but it was largely because you were doing something before you came. You were already auditioning. That's
right.
You had an agent. You'd been working in the Midwest. We did an episode with Dean Batali, who was a showrunner and a producer and a writer. And he said he was, before he ever came to Hollywood, he'd been writing theater for years, and he had a whole stack of plays that he'd written and a lot of stuff he'd done. So he didn't come empty-handed. I think people who come to LA with nothing, have never acted or don't have an agent, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yes, and it usually ends there. I mean, that's a 95% failure rate.
Yes, or if you've written one screenplay, that's not enough. You need to you have to have a track record, so when you hit the street here, you've got something to show for your life.
That's such a good point, and it's something I've thought about since I first got here.
Okay.
The difference between success and fruitfulness. If you look in the Bible, for example, every time it says the word success, it says, and God gave him success, which means that success is totally up to him. That's on his business card. When you see the word fruitfulness, it's God saying to us, be fruitful. Live out who you're created to be every day. That's our job. And what I find is so many people are so focused on success, they don't spend time being fruitful every day. And I think that's what helped me, is that I was in the Midwest. I was being fruitful every day. Every day I was saying, well, now what can I do today to move this forward?
Yes.
To continue to roll this boulder uphill. And I think once you learn that, that's something you carry with you by the time you get here. You just concentrate on being fruitful every day, knowing that success eventually will be something that comes to you in the Lord's time.
Well, I challenge people sometimes that I'm speaking or teaching to take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle, and on the left side, write the 5 things you want to accomplish with your life. Make a movie, write a book, launch a company, whatever. And on the right side, list the 5 things you spend most of your day doing.
Yeah.
And in most cases, they don't jive. People aren't doing that, at least one thing every day to move their career forward. And I think you're exactly right that we need to really be serious. I mean, be ruthless about our time. and every day be doing something that helps move our career forward. Research, auditions, writing, creating, designing, whatever we're doing, every day move that career forward.
And sometimes it's the smallest thing. Sometimes it's just making a phone call.
Yes.
And even if you can't reach that person, it's like, I made my phone call and I was fruitful today, and I can lay my head on my pillow and say I did my best today.
I gave it my shot.
Yeah.
The other thing I see a lot is people do one thing. They're in one short film, or they write a script, and they think that's what's going to deliver me to the big time.
Yeah.
And they don't write it. They stop.
Yeah.
And they're waiting for that to be their tool. The truth is, most writers I know, have written multiple scripts, multiple books. They've done a lot of work, and because it's a lifestyle. Writing is not something I do when I want to publish a book. It's something I do every single day.
Yeah.
I launched my blog to get me in the habit of writing every day. And so I think actors, we need to think that way as far as auditions and practicing, taking classes, DPs, everybody, whatever your goal is. You need to be doing something every day.
And I think that comes back to that fruitfulness idea.
I love that concept.
You just have to do it every single day, and surround yourself with a group of people that are inspiring you to do that every day.
True.
So many people they do it alone, they get discouraged, and as a result, they're like, well, I'm not going to do it today because it didn't work yesterday.
Yeah.
And after a while, they just kind of let it go, and then suddenly they're off the track altogether.
That's a great word. That's a good word for me. Stop worrying about success and start worrying more about fruitfulness.
Yeah.
Get out there, do what you can, worry about success less, and start doing what you can. I think that's good. All right, so let's talk about Saints and the Poets for a minute.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from people about the book? What do people resonate with about the book?
I think what it is that there are so many creative people. Well, let's say this. Creative people are weird, okay? I say that as a creative person.
I am too.
And so we tend to go through life feeling a little alienated.
Yeah.
And not feeling like anybody understands this path that we've chosen to take, or we've been called to
Especially if you're surrounded by people that don't get the creative thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I see so many churches and schools, and they just don't understand creatives. This was written from a creative's perspective.
Awesome.
First of all, to say, hey, you're not alone. This is what it looks like. There are people who have gone before you, and we're here to lend a helping hand. And so this book is really about that. It's like, how do we begin to equip one another with not only creatively, but the spiritual values that come into being a creative, the emotional and the intellectual values, being a holistic person as a creative.
That's really good. I love that, because you're exactly right. Creativity, it's people go into creative fields because it's fun to a great extent.
Yeah.
But it's also, it'll drive you nuts.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any field where people commit suicide more than creative fields: painters, artists, writers. And
Lawyers.
Dentists, I hear.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, they're so down in the mouth. Can we edit that out?
Oh, don't you dare. That's too good. So anyway, what are you working on now? What's the focus of your work? What's happening?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of stuff. Like I said, I wear a lot of hats. I'm teaching a number of entertainment law classes at various colleges around the country. Lipscomb University out of Nashville. I'm teaching at Regent University in Virginia Beach, and then a little Catholic college down south here, John Paul the Great Catholic University. So I teach entertainment law. I teach financing for films, distribution, marketing, that sort of thing for films, and that's something that I enjoy. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I had, by the way, before you go, I had a conversation with Simon Swart, who came out of a business background. He was the director of finance for Fox for years before he went into their home entertainment division, and now as you know, he's an independent producer. But we're talking about the business avenue. Film schools get people excited about being an actor or director or producer, but they don't teach much in the way of business or law, and a huge amount of when we changed the name of our company from Cooke Pictures to Cooke Media Group, I had no idea of all the legal things, from getting trademarks and registering it for being able to invoice clients, and just so much that we had to go through. And so I think teaching young filmmakers about business and law, I think, is something that we need to do more of.
Yeah, it is show business. So many people focus on the show part and forget about the business
Simon
part.
says if you could break even, you get to do it again.
Yes,
so business matters.
That's right, and even more so if you can turn a profit.
Yes.
So that's definitely something that I feel strongly about, especially for the next generation of artists that are coming up through the ranks. Another thing that I'm doing right now, I'm working on another book. This one's a novel, actually. I'm working on a spy thriller, so I'm branching out a little bit. Of course, we've got the greenhouse and all the programs
Yeah.
that we've got going on there, and there's just a ton more coming up. There's just a lot. I'm on a producing team for a couple television shows that are
Awesome.
not ready for prime time yet, but they're getting close
Good for you.
with a producing team out of Nashville. So working on that.
And as a producer, what do you find is the greatest challenge that you face?
For me personally,
For you personally, yeah.
Oh, just getting up, and there's so many different pieces to the puzzle.
Okay.
And it's much more than we think about when we go to a movie.
Yeah.
We're just sitting there and we're watching the Avengers or whatever we end up watching, and for some reason we don't get all the various pieces of the puzzle that are required to make this
True.
happen. And so as a producer, you are always bombarded with something you weren't expecting. And you have to be so light on your toes and able to handle those things that come at you. Yeah.
So what's the best website to find out about what's going on in your life? Is it Greenhouse?
Yeah, Greenhouse Productions is a good one. Then
Okay.
there's shunlee.com. We try to keep as many things out there as we can in terms of websites and
That's
social
smart.
media.
Greenhouseproductions.com, shunlee.com.
Yep.
Shunlee.com. And that's where, and trust me, if you're a filmmaker, if you're somebody that's either new to the industry or you're experienced but you're struggling, go check out greenhouse.com, especially because those spotlight workshops are fantastic. And it's an easy, inexpensive way to get in and really be mentored by some leaders in the industry. It doesn't matter if you're post-production, pre-production, production, whatever you do, there's a spotlight workshop coming up for you. So you can get on their mailing list. I get their emails, and I think that's a great opportunity. And definitely get the book, The Saints and the Poets. If you're a creative person, you need to surround yourself with books that will encourage you and help you really get excited about living the creative life. Because trust me, it's a lifestyle. It's not just something you do, it's something you are.
It should be something that you're dreaming about at night. It
Yeah.
should be that pervasive in your life.
And I'm a big believer too, by the way. A lot of the stuff we talk about in these episodes are what I call practical creativity. It's not sitting in your back porch coming up with your novel or
Yeah.
your painting. It's really about, okay, how do I write or design or do whatever, create a film or a video on a deadline?
Right.
How do I start with a blank page and really work on a deadline and hit a target? Because so many of us work in advertising or marketing
Right.
in areas where we're trying to tell a story under pressure.
Right.
And I think creativity is really about problem solving and figuring out the best way to tell that story. So I think there's a lot of practical stuff, and
Absolutely.
you deal with some of it in your book. And I just would encourage you to give it a thought, take it and read it and buy it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Phil.
This has
It's
been
to be
great. I
here.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Remember, share this with your friends. If you've got somebody that's coming to Hollywood or you're somebody that's in Hollywood or trying to make it in the entertainment industry, share this episode with your friend because it'll really help them get to the next level in their career. Check us out at philcooke.com, my blog, where we write about all these things, the intersection of faith, media, and culture. And we appreciate you so much being a part of this. Thanks for writing comments about this, rating us online. It's so important for getting us up in the search engine, getting more people to see this stuff. Thanks so much for being a part of this conversation.